Robert. Yeah.
All to order. Call the pledge of allegiance, please. Roll call. Here.
Mr. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Paradise.
Here.
Fernandez.
So for building a little quick, I'm the chairman of the board of finance. Everyone here. Before I get into the proposed budget, I want to briefly talk about the state law, it becomes as a result of this most recent revaluation, Berlin's ground tax is 17.7%, which means that Berlin property market value as a whole is 17.7%. All was equal and the property value was 7.7%. Property taxes from the revaluation will stay the same as last year. Market value increase is offset by a reduction in power. That's not the case. Residential property value grew an average of 21.7% compared to commercial property that grew an average of 13.8%. So it's no surprise that residential market values have increased substantially. The housing market exploded during the pandemic, resulting in overbidding, a limited supply of homes. If your home's market value was lower than the 7% average, your property tax associated with that new market price would be less than last year. On the other side, if the market value is over the 17%, your property tax will higher as a result of revaluation. The majority of approximately 75% of home market values were above the 17.7%. Taxes will go up an average of 3.4% just from the revaluation. An example to show you keeping the revaluation or financing fiscally responsible budget, maintain the high quality of services, common and affordable education. The Board of Finance was given a proposed budget that would increase the tax rate. Keep in mind that this increase would be in addition to any tax increase revaluation. After a thorough review of the proposed budget, Board of Finance made a sound budget adjustment, reduced tax increase of 10.4% to 2.95%. Let's not forget that in the last 3 years, the town did not increase the taxes in the first 3 years and only increased taxes 1.1% last year. So with continued inflationary pressure and a need to take on more capital improvement projects, 2.95% increase was the best we can do. Some of the major capital projects that are being planned are much needed upgrades to the police departments and HVAC upgrades for Hubbard and Griswold. HVAC upgrades are both school are scheduled next this summer. Proposed budget also includes additional costs and more attractive pension plan for our police to help with pension and improvement. Board of Finance approved the town operating budget approximately 0.3% lower than last year's budget. Based on the projected budget surplus for the current year, this reduction was expected. Board of Finance majority vote approved the 3% Board of Education operation budget compared to the BYE requested 5.84%. The superintendent request was a 4.87% increase. So it's kind of a surprise that the BOE chose to increase 5.84%. Keep in mind that last year's approved budget increase of 2.5% was sufficient, even though the BOE requested a 4.67% increase, which included contractual obligations of 3.68%. As mentioned last year, education in Berlin is been more than adequately funded. Fight for the decline in student enrollment. Went back to 2009. Since 2009, the student enrollment dropped 500 students, while the number of teachers has stayed pretty much the same. On the other hand, paraprofessional and support staff accounts substantially, 179 to 49. For all education expenses, when you include town support, facility and capital costs, the school debt represents 60.6% of the total expense budget, with the town at 39.4%. Burlington per pupil expenditure is the highest in comparison to 6 similar nearby towns. Those towns include Glastonbury, Newton, Hamilton, Weathersfield, Rockville. This year, the town expects $2.2 million in additional tax revenue. Build growth. These are bringing more businesses. Take some of our major building projects. Tax abatements drop off. Groundless extra revenue continue to drop. That increase, along with improving the blue card traffic, provide more financial flexibility. I want to thank all town and BOE officials and managers working with the Board of Finance. I want to thank the Board of Finance for working together. This is solid. With that, I'll turn over Mike to our town manager role.
Good evening, everyone. I can see everyone here. I'm just proud I have seen since came out 4 years ago. So welcome. So Mr. Woodnow actually has performed for a few of the talking points that I was mentioned, but I will go through very quickly. This slide here, all the information that we are sharing with you available on our website. Go on there, there's a flashing breaking news icon. You know, if you click on that, it will take you to initial budget submitted on the Board of Education in the town, on the worksheets associated with the capital plans, anything that you need to know, all the detailed budgets are there. So when you get a chance, just go ahead and take a look at it, because I think there's a lot of information out there. So this is the agenda that you have. What I would like to do is to go through the website, and I'll tell you that has to be over the Board of Education budget. And then we'll get back to the chair of the Board of Finance for closing comments before we take the comments. So before I get into see biologists and the budget of the town, just want to briefly talk about the overall strategy itself. This particular one is to Berlin and other towns that build their cities in terms of how we go about putting the budget together. But when you look at the town or a city, Berlin is not any different. People move to a town and live there, go to the school, because of the safety. You have affordability and all the other immigration activity that's offered to citizens. As we get to new priorities and the needs of the town change, all it becomes balancing act on how we pay for certain things that the economy provide and incorporate the new initiatives to the town's financial plan. We try to do this by having a grant list. So we get funding from state and local government. We responsibly borrow money. We have to for debt, and we pay us out to our savings. Then of course, some tax revenues on personal or real estate.
Mommy.
I'll talk about this a little bit, but I wanted to just give you a quick overview to sort of establish the base before we get started. 2.869 grand list, about a $430 million increase from last year. But 3/4 of that came from the revaluation. So the remaining 116 or so from the total amount from the actual open managed generates about a $2.2 million in tax revenues. These are the different components that we mentioned before. Real estate went up the highest, or 19.8%, almost 20% average. Personal property is 1.1%, and other goes 4.5%. If we had the same level of expenditure as last year, or we had this grand list at the beginning of last year, the mill rate would have been 29.16. So remember that that's the starting point, not the 34.31 that we had the year before. Since the grand list rate of the system went up, the mill rate comes down. So the starting point is 29.16. Now we'll just go through very quickly of the changes that we incorporated into the budget. And it goes up on 4.86. So the priorities for the town, we wanted the town manager's budget, but it's not that the town manager and the staff will come up with the budget. So with a spreadsheet, it starts with the priorities that are set by the town council. Start early in the fall. Council engages with a plan for ed, other boards and commissions. Town priorities, and these are the priorities that were established throughout the year. Very briefly, all three of the elementary schools they plan to replace the HVAC system. With it when we get started this summer, that fund will be ARPA fund, we must do plan fund, that will be covered. We started to fund it from a combination of state funding and debt. We talked about the police station, that's a 50-year-old building, needs some upgrade and renovations, and that is also included in this budget. Bowling High School courtyard, this is the 1950s construction, the was some moisture coming, that needs to get addressed. We plan to fix that this year. Fields, the two big ones are the Skyview field that's getting sheltered, and first of all field to go completely and replaced between mass. And then the roads. The big project that we are planning this year with the DOT funding is the Deming Road, which is in Forest Pass. In addition to that, the state's planning to work on Farmington Ave. I encourage you to go on the Public Works website. It has all the paving projects outlined for the town for this summer. Take a look at that when you get a chance. So the last blocks are the ones where the solar panels are mounted and needs concrete glass, beginning to crumble, and it needs some attention. So that will happen this summer as well. And that pertains to the public safety. About 20 years ago, we, got out of the police defined benefit plan and went to defined contribution plan. We are finding it's very difficult to recruit and obtain police officers. Can't even get applications to most of the other towns to provide this benefit. We have been working with the ad hoc group of the council, the police commission, for a try and resurrect the new EV plan, which is in the work, and we hope to roll it out by July 1st. We have also included 4 new police officers, in addition to the police force. We'll talk more about that a bit later. And some capital improvements for the school vans. We have 20-something school vans that needs replacement, and to address that. Same with the highway truck, school cameras, into security, continuously upgrading those things. And then the Timberlane golf course for several bridges that's replacement, we can start with this year. We have economic development opportunities. The big ones are the DOT, the downtown project, we'll go a lot of Austin Avenue, and then we have a couple going on the turnpike, which is the Acura, even and stuff of the lobsters, there will be excuse projects that would have some partners as well. So those are the priorities for the town, and based on these priorities, we submitted the budget to the board of ed at the time to the board of finance. The initial budget submitted was about $8.9 million, and that went to a $105 million total budget. The rate was 2.19. That was the starting point as submitted by the town to the board of ed. Then there were a couple of workshops on the board of finance that address bring some of these numbers. One was we had the town budget, non-salary, some contractual, some non-personnel budget, and overall release the town budget different departments for $300,000. The staff that I talked about for police officers, currently there are 8 openings in the Berlin PD. So it's highly unlikely that we can fill all those positions next year. So the positions are approved, but the funding pulled back, and we'll get it back when the time is going. The VNA, the VNA has been the net cost of the town in 2021 was about $921,000, and we are at the target of trying to do the revenue that's being allowed from the cost structure, bringing the net deficit down. 2022, we closed around 754, down to 750 or so this year. But the goal is to try and improve the net bottom line by $50,000 or $75,000 each year. In order to do this, we need to actually grow the top line. So this is not part of the presentation, but I'm telling you, if you're a voting resident, the patient bill of right, you have the right to pick the voting game. So tell people, your family, your friends, your neighbors, if you're ever going to the hospital, you can't pick the voting game or out there. And it's a 5-star rating, take most insurance. And in addition to that, provide pretty much all the services that you would expect from a home health care agency. Next one that we have is the animal control. The town asked a niche ordinance this last fiscal year. And as part of that ordinance, we had 1.5 FTE that control office. We were hoping to get that to a student FTEs to enforce the lease ordinance. Effective now, everywhere in town in all public spaces. Well, that's supposed to be unleashed except that this doesn't fit in the area. But we did have to make an adjustment there. That the protocol and the from and the other one is the police pension. As part of the rollout of the deep plan, there was the initial cost associated with it, which is the town subsidy. And rather than amortizing the cost or taking the cost in for a 5-year period, it will be extended in for 10 years. And that's about $39,000. I believe the Board of Health reduction, Julia will talk about it. The presentation. Capital reduction, we had submitted a capital, we have a 10-year plan for the town, $3.8 million request. These numbers were reduced in order to manage the bill rate by 1.6. So we still have a good amount of capital, 1.7 in the capital budget, where there's some critical needs such as the school grants, facing the funding. Well, things such as bridges that I mentioned before. The last one raised from the government down on rates that will cover the highest priorities that we have. In addition to that, we had also the debt service for the police station, as well as the elementary schools, and the part of this adjustment, what we are doing is to bring the principal payment one more fiscal year, one fiscal 2025, and just keep the interest in this year's budget. We have also requested, as part of the budget submission, we have an opportunity to apply for federal and state grants, the portion that might follow a matching grant from the town. These grants are like all with this $26 and to apply for these grants and get a good return. We have requested 250, we brought it down to 100. So those are the expense reductions that brought down. In addition to that, as you may have noticed, the interest rates have been going up, and the cash sitting in the town, where the cash pocket rates over there, you get a higher return, and you have to stay. In addition to that, we are also next for the pension from the unbalanced data from so we can well, that brings the total mill rate to 30. So very quickly, the recap the general fund increases of $2.5 million. Pension is the big chunk, $93. Part of it is the closed pension, which is we still have 3 people on that. So from years ago, and then the new police pension part of 150. And then the net is about 103. So much that are 310, and the existing service goes down by about 207. Capital 130.7, we talked about that. Non-operations 373,000. That includes everything from salary increases to health insurance to other types of insurance. 373. Little bit over 1% of non-operating increases. I'm interested in total about $2 million. So too small to see. This is the snapshot of Then it's about this. And then I go very quickly. Give you, just a recap of the expenses and the revenue. What is highlighted here is the pie chart. Part of it. What a bit budget, including what some of the town expenses are, cover the board of that. Includes things that's facilities, ground, insurance, and security, electricity, workers, that the $5 million also that you see the government pays for the board of that. The general government is the large buy of the town and the EV. And then the long term debt, we have about $10 billion or so in debt service each year. The target should be around 3 to 5, but we are obviously 5, and then working on that to bring the annual debt service down. So what I've 3% increase now, 5.3% increase to about $100 million or $1 million plus from the year before. How do we pay for it? It should be supplied because of the taxes. Well, 87% of it. We have got a collection rate. 3% of the interest income. So this year we have by 1.5 million. Education, this has to do with bill rate for motor vehicles that was kept by the state 146, and the town gets a grant. That grant we can get it next year, so that's included in the budget. And then we are also increasing the amount that we are paying for this from the savings or the fund balance. That's $170,000 more. Education sharing grant is the same as last year, around $5.8 million. The change money. And then one change that we are making that private the road or the revenue that we get and the expenses we're looking out the strategy is anything that we make on that, we can put it back to replace the people and funding. So building water control, this is not paid for from the taxes. It's an enterprise fund. The revenue that collected from the building water company pays for the expenses. And the expenses actually go down this year about $300,000. The large main reason for that is the capital that's been for the power of the big area of the power station. There's another water line connection, rehabilitation. So that is just FYI, this is back in the way, but it's part of it. What I go to is a couple of notes on the time frame. To be able to look at the end of the building, what are the main reports to run, what are the education and what to the town council. Town council next week, report Tuesday. The other options they have, they can approve the board of management and the budget. They will reduce it. And protect the budget. It protects for between the council and council. So with that, and going to go to the board of slide.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Thank you for having us here this evening. Thank you, everyone who's here. I also would like to thank the members of the Board of Education, for all your effort. You were hearing. Thank you to all the members of the Board of Education for your time and effort in this process. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of time and years. And you know, that will go unnoticed. And thank you to Superintendent and his administration for proposing the budget and then great options. A lot goes into this. This is the work we do during the year, and it's pretty serious. It's we don't think it lightly. So I'm going to start out with the Board of Education goal for 2024 year. It's important to start with these to understand the process a little bit more, and the thought and planning and effort that goes in on all of this. So provide quality education, prepare students for multiple options and opportunities, maintain favorable trust and support offerings, to consistently support technology, and to commit to receive from all of the staff. So oftentimes throughout the budget season, when we talk about the items for narratives, in statements, how the education has been adequately funded. I think it's important to talk about, we don't see the word adequate up here. Adequate in definition means satisfactory or acceptable quality. And we're talking about providing of quality, like beyond it. That's why we want to schools, and that's why I'm grounding our presentation this evening in that. Parents don't want their kids to be satisfactory or acceptable. They want more for their teachers, they want more for the building, the administrators. And I think that's something that's really special about Berlin. So, that's when I think about the word adequately, we have been adequately funded. However, this year we have different circumstances, and I'm going to get into that. Hopefully, I can make it a little bit, a little more clear. Our beliefs about learning: all students learn when they feel safe, included, respected, and valued by their community. We must believe in, challenge, and support all students to reach their personal goals and our high expectations. Learning is enhanced by a cycle that includes goal setting, practice, feedback, and reflection. Students are empowered and engaged by choice and authentic learning experience. And again, these beliefs about learning are really important to ground our budget and where we're working and at. So I want to talk about the budget process. So there's been a lot out there about the numbers. The numbers can get confusing, especially if you're not part of the process from the beginning until the end. So typically our budget process starts December, January. This year we started it earlier. On August 19th, I believe, the superintendent and I met with the town manager, Scornero and Mary Kaczynski, and we started the conversation. As we said, I think it's responsible and really trying to work to understand all ends of it, so we can come in and try and work together to fund people. So we started that back in August. From that meeting, we discussed that the joint meeting that we had in February or March between the Board of Finance and the Board of Ed, it's too late because numbers are pretty much rolling and we already have a plan set. So we actually, this year was the first year where we had a joint town council, Board of Finance and Board of Ed meeting in September. That was on Wednesday, September 21st. And I think that was really important also in the process to part the dialogue. We may not all agree on the number that we should come in with, and the respective boards and committees have to do what they have to do. We all have our own jobs, but at least the communication can. And we're trying to, come together and, have an idea of what direction we were going in. Throughout February, we had multiple budget meetings. And on March 1st, there was a joint meeting between Board of Ed, and Board of Finance, where we went through the budget again. So we've gone through this budget multiple times. And then we had committee meetings and we met again with the mayor and the Board of Finance, superintendent and myself, to continue to communicate and express our needs. And they've done the same. So, you know, I read that right as well. Noted. So the Board of Education budget at a glance, so the original proposal. I'll actually explain it really quick right here. So the superintendent's proposed budget is 4.87%. The Board of Ed's adopted budget was 5.84%. Out of that 5.84, the contractual obligations alone were 4.23%. So understanding the process and the time that was put in multiple meetings, the Board of Education adopted a higher budget than the superintendent's proposed budget. You know, again, going back to the goals and the beliefs about learners, this is what the board felt was best, based on the needs, especially thinking about learning loss and learning recovery, and making sure that we provide excellent education to our students. And then last week, the Board of Finance voted more than 3%, and you know, the town manager already explained the rest. We're well into the process at this point. Here is our budget at a glance when we came in at 5.84%, and with the roughly 1.4 million reduction to bring us down to a 3%. So our contractual obligations went from 72% of the overall budget to 70%. So it's important to know, I know this slide is small, you have it in front of you, but it's important to know that contractual obligations do take up a significant portion of our budget. And this is our stacked bar, so you can see the same information is laid out in a different one. So so this chart right here shows the reduction, we stand with that. This will look like with a $1.4 million. And that's the table if you love gets at. So this is what was covered in the finance and operations meeting last week. This has not been approved at the board yet. We have a special meeting on April 10th, where the board will discuss in further detail. So this started at the board subcommittee level. We started up with the board. From there, we made sure that our mayor and the board of finance would see this, and then you know, Berlin staff and faculty to see that, and from there, you know, it's out there now, a lot of people have seen it. And it's just important to know what the proposed cuts will be. And again, this has not been approved by the board doesn't need to talk about these things. It's important that this does get out within the community, so it's what questions or concerns that be brought forward to the board prior to that meeting. And then the board can really have time to think about it and discuss it and come up with, you know, what those specific cuts are going to be. But this is what was brought forward by the superintendent and his administration, who are the educational experts, and they're the ones who are going to impact the most. So this is the cuts. The next sheet that you may have seen, and I thought about, do we include this, do we not include this? I think it's important to include, to explain that the board can have further discussion, and these are other things that will be put into the reductions, that we want to take other things out based on our conversation. However, it is important to know that the pay to play, paying for parking at VHS, Those are things that are gonna cost the board more money. I know the board parents more money. We don't want to be putting more on parents. The board has not talked about this in detail. That's my take at this point, but we do want to be very mindful of anything that we can put in to offset costs. We want to make the most responsible decisions that have the least impact on children, families, teachers, overall educational community within our town. So the reallocation of ESSER funding, so will be reallocating the remainder of ESSER funds to maintain the ESSER school solutions at the middle school. That's a program that has been put into highly effective at our high school, it's at the middle school now. And that's a program that really helps the students who need it be successful, and that's our goal. Our family communication specialist and one reading and correction teacher. The ESSER funds are not being used for Summer Academy 2023 or 2024, or the ruler training for 2023-2024 school year. So additions to our budget, we have one new staff position. This is a placeholder for an elementary school teacher at Griswold or Willard, depending on the kindergarten enrollment numbers. So we had to add that in based on enrollment. And again, our repeat of the new position, which is new, and then mandated training, which is in compliance with House Bill 5321. So those are only two things that have been added to our budget. There's nothing else added. So this is just the budget overview, the executive summary of our $50,555,074 budget. If we have, with the 3%. So getting a 3% increase, this is our overall budget. And if you look carefully at the budget package you have, you can see the line by line, right? The different areas, what's being funded and what's been funded. It's important to know the 5-year comparison for employees. As you can see, there have been reductions. You can see the historical from 2019 through our anticipated numbers for next year. And you can see the paraprofessionals have decreased 12 positions, teachers and certified staff, 4 custodians, 1 unaffiliated, 25. The open choice enrollment number, this slide is important to discuss because we've seen a decline in the open choice enrollment. That's happening with all the districts that participate in open choice. This started over the pandemic and has continued. It began with transportation being an issue, and now more students are choosing to stay in Hartford and not participate in choice programs. So it's not specific to Berlin, but it is tied directly to our funding. It is a reduction in funding for us. It is funding that we rely on, and now it's funding that we, we're losing. So for the 2022-2023 school year, we offered 39 seats for the choice students, and 19 were filled. 11 kindergarten, 3 second grade, 2 fourth, 1 fifth, 2 seventh, all siblings and relatives of students. Open choice funding is based on the percentage of enrollment. As the percentage of open enrollment students decreases, the funding increases. If we fall below 4%, that's where we start seeing a reduction. And like I said, that is money we relied on to offset our operational budget, and now we have to adjust to that. So this is the open choice anticipated budget, for $1 million. And well, the anticipated revenue is going to be $731,075. And if you look through, you can see what's funded. So our budget funding history. The past few years have, the funding we have received has been favorable, it has worked. Like Sal Bornero said during his opening, it has been adequate. Though we've received, 3.21 in 2019, 2020. 3.2 in 2021, 3.17, 21, 22, and 2.5 in 22, 23. We've still had to make cuts. But as you continue to cut, there's less to cut. So, though this year, the 3%, typically it has been favorable and it has worked and it's been excellent getting that to maintain our funding and provide an excellent education with international obligations and where we are, inflation as well as all the other economic factors. We're just in a different position here. So also last year, we were able to cut in our superintendent. That was a big cut to our budget. We didn't replace that position. That had the least impact on the students. It's important to mention that because we've always tried to have the least impact on the student. We don't want the students to feel it. We don't want the parents to be impacted. And Brian and his administration have had to take on more roles to fulfill that void of an administrator that we've always had. So there's just less to come from it. So moving to the new apartment, this is going to have an impact to the district. We can project and start to plan for what that impact is going to be. However, we won't actually know until these units are built. So in the fall of 2023 on Deming Road, there are going to be 88 units. 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. 2-bedroom apartments can be your single parents, they can be renters, they can sold their house at the height of the pandemic who are looking to get into a new build. It can be a multitude of things, but this could be bringing people to our town and having more kids come to our schools. So it's difficult to anticipate, but it's important to do so. With more students coming to our schools, our needs will increase. So the percentage of special education costs to the overall budget. Paraprofessionals and support staff, they keep our schools afloat and they make learning possible for a lot of students, and they make this jobs doable. And they're also mandated, especially in the special education. So there's no wiggle room around that. A number of paraprofessional positions are being reduced due to the budget cuts that you guys have also seen. However, those positions were the ones that were equal to reduce. But if you look at this pie chart right here, you can see that 25% of the board, roughly 24%, but roughly a quarter of the Board of Education budget is for special education. And the Board of Education cannot change how this is funded. We can't offset with certain things. We're mandated by the state to do so. The pre-K through 12 special education, these are the rates side by side with the state. So we're following the same trend. This is not unique to Berlin. This is not unique to the state. This is happening statewide. And again, when a student qualifies for services, the public school system should and has to, fund those services and make sure that all students have the opportunity to learn in those environments. So this is just, another chart to show that. And, when students who are special education receive outpatient services, the district has to pay for that as well. And outpatient could be upwards of $100,000. It depends. Each outplacement varies, but again, the district doesn't have a choice in saying, "Oh, we're going to keep you here." However, we do try and take action, like having effective school solutions in the middle school and high school, so we can create an environment for all students that learn and house instead of pay for them to be outplaced. So moving on to this slide, Berlin's adopted budgets in the past few years have compared favorably. It's important to know what was adopted, what our 5-year increases. We have moved up significantly over the past few years in this area, and it's had a positive impact. So this is our third. So these are similar districts to Berlin. We are right in the middle. So even if we came in with the superintendent's proposed budget, we only need 2 spots up with it. So the superintendent's proposed budget versus the board adopted budget doesn't change where we are on our movement. So you can also see that the percent requested with similar towns, we are right in the middle. So we are not at the high end, we're not at the low end, we're not asking for anything out of the ordinary. This is just right in the middle. Our per pupil expenditure, we are a little bit above the average for this. And then you can see how we compare to this. So the state is at 21,355 for the 2021-2022 year, and we're at 20,300. So we had to just provide this data just to show that what our ask was with increasing superintendent's proposed budget. We are not, we're not an outlier in comparison to others. So the historical Berlin net current expenditure per pupil is also an important chart to reference. You can see the bulk rate, and you can see other information about the state and our town, and where we are in our rate and stuff. I'm going to get into the historical deposits and the non-lapsing accounts. So during a number of our meetings there and the Board of Finance meetings that I've attended, there have been discussion as well as confusion around the Board of Education surplus at the end of the year. I think it's important to mention, yes, we have ended with the surplus. Our surplus has not been secret, been communicated with the town, and we do our best to always return money after expenses covered for other things that need to be run. So the surplus chart that's been put out by the Board of Finance addresses Board of Education surplus. I think it's important to note that the town also had a surplus. I have asked for that, but I have not yet received it. But there is a surplus on both ends. I think the surplus is expected, especially the past few years, because with COVID, there were a number of cost savings. So in 2019 to 2020, we had a cost savings because of transportation, utilities, and supplies. So our negotiated rates for transportation, we negotiated them, which led to a cost savings. Students not in the buildings, there was a savings with utilities and supplies on the fourth floor. Also without athletics, trips, the busing to and from, there was a substantial savings. 2020 to 2021, again, the start of school year. So again, we were able to negotiate the transportation for that year. There is a fuel savings. Fuel also cost us. So we had the savings because we weren't transporting students, but then also the cost of utilities. The secretary level was the two, Vicky and VHS were operating on a hybrid. So we saw a reduction in utilities as well. And that's why we have had the total 3-year history for non-lapsing deposit for unfunded capital projects of 1.1 million. In the fiscal years 2020, 2021, it was significantly impacted, like I said, and 400,000 was referred. And here I just want to wrap up with a school district's budget reflects the commitment of the community to invest in the future of our children. So the erosion of funding transportation challenges, the sustainability of Berlin's competitive school district with rich educational and co-curricular opportunities for our youth. That's important, and it was important to start with. And I think it's also important, to note the meetings and the planning of the time that has all gone into this. And I do want to thank Board of Finance for going through this at capital meetings, and I want to thank Mayor Mark for taking the time to meet with staff and myself. I think all of you have worked hard in the board, and I think everyone here has come forward to try to make the best possible decisions about education. And this is where we are at. Berlin Public Schools is an excellent school system. We want to maintain that. We want to continue to gain these recognitions. We provide all students with excellent opportunities. So thank you for letting me present.
Thank you, Julie.
Wanted to share each of us. First of all, with respect to surplus, really, I have no issues with surplus, whether it's on the top side or the education. We do look at surpluses with respect to our budget. So this chart here, you go to the far right, slide 21. First blue line is DOE request. Next one, the next bar represents portion of that as our contractual obligation. What we ended up budgeting for the Board of Education was 3.17. Well, the contractual obligation. And then the last yellow bar represents if there was represents that there was surplus during that year. So if I adjusted for surplus, which is just an adjustment, would have said that the Board of Education would only be 0.07% after adjusting for surplus. If you thought in fiscal year 2022 and 23, Board of Education requested a 4.67% increase. Within that, 3.68% contractual obligation. And we approved a budget of 2.5% for that year. The current proposal, as Julia mentioned, the request was for 5.84. The contractual obligation within that is 4.4. But we also looked at what the superintendent initially requested. Superintendent requested a 4.87% increase, of which 3.43% is contractual obligation. So based on looking at all the statistics, all the history here, Board of Finance decided to come forward with 3%. Next set of charts I presented during my budget presentation. Basically, it's all the history on 5 years that have been closed out. Starting FY 2017 all the way to FY. Basically, it was the first bar That's the DOE requested increase. So it's anywhere between 4% and 6%. The actual budget that was approved is between 2% and 3% by the yellow lines. And in this case, here I did the same thing. In those years where there's surpluses every year, sure, the bill requirement, not the bill requirement, requirement just of the surplus is even lower. But in the case of FY 21-22, the budget is 4.5% increase, budget was 3.17. Adjustment for surplus, went down to 2.07. Point is that we spent more than sufficient operation. And Julia mentioned the curves. Look at net current expenditure for fiscal year 2021. Rolling was second compared to similar balance nearby. 21-22 year. Everyone's first among these down. But I think overall, we've been pretty clear with this. The education budget and growth. I go back to the investment revaluation. This chart here shows exit from abroad, what the percentage increase of home valuations went up. So for example, if you look at the largest increase, where it was 30.8% of household and an increase in valuation between 20% and 25%. So if you look at it across the board, many of the pretty drastic increases, 75% of those households will pay more taxes from the valuation because it's above the 17.6%. So the tax valuation on less than 17.7%, you got a tax reduction from property tax reduction. If that's 17, you will property tax over 17.7%. Get the tax increase, never pay 75% households based on each other. Here's an example. If your house was valued in the year 2021 at $2,000, and the valuation went up 20.7%, went up to $365,000. You set taxes based on 7% of that market value. So the mill rate associated just with the revaluation went down to 29.6. Now, person's tax would go up to $7,450 compared to last year's tax at $7,000. So that's an increase of $247 a year, about 3.4%. Then when you add the tax increase of 2.95%, that generates an additional $220 in tax, about 3%. So overall, the taxpayer is paying a total annual amount, additional amount of $466, 6.5%. That's going to 21%. Go back to this chart. Quite a few households, but much higher than 2%. So basically, what I'm saying is, there's going to be a lot more households than we pay more than 6.5% this year. Budget evaluation, even over 10%. So when we developed this budget, we did consider the evaluation, but we also considered that it was a fair and solid budget. I just wanted people to understand the impact of the evaluation. That this concludes our presentation. And I want to thank Tom and Brian, everyone working really big stand for high quality services and education. And we just have to make decisions. We have to balance. And we balance the budget, as far as this thing, and also consider the evaluation part. So we're always working together with education, managers, and researchers. See if we can work together and come to resolve this. Awesome. Thank you. And this includes that, and we're gonna go into the audience of citizens. That's right. So. Guess you can come out with your mic, so. You can come out to the mic, state your name and address. And. One, then we can, and we will zoom after that. Anybody wants to come up and speak, you're free to speak. Like a minute or so, 2 minutes.
Right.
Something like this. Say your name, please, and address.
Cortland Fugel, 115 Street. Wife and I, there's 2 children. We'll be in there for quite some time. Just when everyone making their way through elementary, school districts is big. And my family, the people in this audience, what we see from this budget is a substantial cut into the capacity and capability of the school district. It's gonna result in loss of many jobs and resources for students. $1.4 million cut off of the group budget. That is substantial. Now, it's important to recognize that this sends a huge message to prospective families that want to move into town, to teachers that may be looking for jobs in the district, that we don't prioritize our students. I understand that we've gotten by in past years on 3% and thereabout. Past performance is no indication of future success. It's a different year. We're looking at different circumstances. It is critical that we fund properly, fully fund our school district. Because if we don't, we're failing our kids, failing ourselves as a result. Thank you.
What is the budget surplus for the homicide for this year? For the next budget? Projected budget.
You mean, this is for your comments?
Right, I'm asking a question. No, but I'm asking a question. What is-
Not a back and forth.
No, okay, well, obviously you don't want to answer the question, but I went through some numbers today. And correct me if I'm wrong, our projected surplus this year should be around $4.2 million. That's our projected surplus of homicide. So I'm looking at a $4.2 million surplus. And I'm looking at a double increase in taxes. My property values in my house went up approximately 18%, so I'm gonna pay around $600,000 in property taxes, not including the 0.8% increase that you're gonna have, just 4.2% increase. Then you cut the Board of Education to 3%, but you still have a $4.2 million surplus. So I'm going through some quick numbers today, my office, and correct me if I'm wrong. If you were to take that 4.2%, and add $590,000 to the Board of Education budget, you would then cover the contractual obligation, so there wouldn't be a problem in the educational side. Then you would take more money out of that 4.2%, $4.2 million, and offset on that 0.8 and maybe get it down to 0, and then we wouldn't have the tax, that would have the tax increase with the revaluation. We'd have the only increase on revaluation. So I think these are taxpayers' money of 4.2%. I think you should give it back to the town, give it back to education, and give it back to the people that need. I mean, I'm not complaining my taxes are going to be, so I can afford to pay that tax. But for the senior citizens that are living on a fixed income, you're taxing them double now with 4.2%. And you're talking about the Board of Education that has surplus, which they return to the they return that money to the town. You criticize the Board of Education for having surpluses, but you guys are sitting on $4.2 million surplus. And not only that, you have like $13 million in your cash on hand, your extra money, your fund balance. So you have 13 million, Well, it's 4.2 million, $17 million, so we shouldn't even be looking at tax increase. And we shouldn't even be looking, we should give the Board of Education what they need, so we can fund education and give the kids the same quality of education that my kids got years ago. When they got quality education, they both have advanced degrees, like perhaps your kids got a quality education down the road. And we shouldn't deprive the students, we shouldn't lay any teachers off, we shouldn't cut the arts program, the music program, sports or anything, since we're sitting at $4.2 million. Thank you.
Lisa Maya, I'm 78 Lower Lane. I'm an English teacher and counseling teacher at Berlin High School, and I have been for the last 18 years. And in full disclosure, I am the Teachers Association president. I feel like we end up here every year for the budget. And every year I come down and I speak on behalf of the Board of Education. But the reality is I'm really not speaking on the budget, I'm speaking about our students and what they need. Every year, when the time comes for these meetings and the plea for the money, I also hear, why should the Board of Ed get more? I'd like to say I don't take those comments personally, but I do. As do the other 251 teachers who work for the district. Not to mention the couple of 100 others who do myriad jobs to make our school system work. So I'd like to briefly comment on a few of the topics that I've heard come up. Since 2020, any piece of data about education in children says that they have suffered through the pandemic, socially, emotionally, and academically. Students across the country have greater needs today than they have ever had. And those needs, unfortunately, have a cost. The sad reality, and our community has a legal, moral, and ethical obligation to meet these students' needs. As a matter of fact, one of the statistics that you talked about at the beginning with the paraprofessional numbers speaks to those needs that have been developed. We don't pick and choose what we want to offer. We provide based on the law and what we know is the right thing to do for these students with their needs. Another topic of concern that comes up often is where our students go to college. And I don't know what that has to do with the budget, but I do hear it come up. With college costs today, it's not where they go to college, it's where they get accepted. I have students every year. I'm applying to Notre Dame, I just want to know if I can get in. I'm applying to BC, I just want to know if I can get in. Notre Dame currently costs $78,000 a year. Boston College is at $81,000. Georgetown is at $82,000, and UPenn is at $83,000. For the record, we have grown students at all those schools. And for the record, we have others who were accepted, but just couldn't go because of the cost. Our students are doing an amazing job, making us immensely proud. Berlin Public Schools has done an excellent job preparing them for success post-high school. We have a who's who out there, and if we kept track of what our kids are doing out in the world today, it's incredible. Those successes don't happen unless those kids can be successful after high school. And they can't be successful in college or whatever they choose to do if high school doesn't fit them well. And as a parent of 2 Berlin High grads, we did a great job. I would put these copies with any kid any day of the week because they're fantastic. Another topic that comes up is SAT scores. I'm struggling to understand how that has to do with the budget as well. College and universities right now, so many of them have bought SAT option. And that's because they know what we've known for years. The SAT scores are not indicative of student success or ability. And that's why Harvard currently has decided to be SAT optional permanent. I have students who are such amazing students and just can't crack an SAT score that would get them into some of the colleges in their places. It's devastating to them. So the fact that we've ever talked budget and SAT scores in the same conversation is concerning. And finally, I heard that perhaps the Board of Ed doesn't negotiate strongly enough on the contracts. I can only speak on behalf of our negotiation. Last year, one piece of evidence that was presented was what rural teachers made if they had been working in neighboring districts. Neighboring districts is very different than the DERG because the DERG measures very specific things and neighboring districts is just geography. This data is from last year and essentially compared what a rural teacher with their master's would have made in other districts over a comparable number of years teaching. I chose step 12 because that was me. It took me 17 years to get to step 12. And over the same 17 years, Here's how much more all the teachers who started with me would have made in their career. If they had worked in Cheshire, they would have made an additional $106,000. If they worked in Newington, they would have made an additional $143,000. And if they worked in Rocky Hill, they would have made an additional $163,000. Say that the people costs in those districts tells us very clearly where our Board of Ed put their money and where those districts put their money. We teach and grow because we love our kids, we love what we do here, and we respect and follow what has been put forward with professionals who know what to do with education. That's why we teach and grow. That's why we don't have a huge turnover rate. It's the right district to work in because we do right by our kids. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Husel and I live at 3 Watch Hill. Families like mine move to Berlin because of the small town feel and the high quality health and education. As a resident mother, educator, and proud graduate of Berlin High School, I am highly alarmed with the budgets are proposing and how they're going to strip needed resources from our students and from our schools. The proposed budget makes me worried about who's going to absorb the needed teaching and learning responsibilities for children. Just removing the jobs is not going to remove the need for our students. This is especially true in the case of kindergarten, where a set of finance and cohesive approach is vital, promoting pro-social learning, executive functions, and progress to academic skills. Our children deserve the strongest educational start possible, and it's exceptionally challenging for a kindergarten teacher alone to make the gains that are expected by benchmark at the end of the school year. Likewise, the proposed cuts to reading, math, and special education paraprofessionals threaten direct intervention that students require in order to make academic progress through SRBF. Even before the pandemic, these supports were needed. Now with gaps in educational experiences, these supports are even more critical for our children. I believe in financial fiscal responsibility, but not at the cost of negatively impacting our student learning. Our students and our hardworking educators and town as a whole deserve a fully funded budget. Research has high funding, task force, graduation rates, and college attendance. Thank you very much for your time.
I am Lori Donovan on the 2 Allen Street, and I'm going to read special ed Griswold School. So for me, my priority is helping students who are not reading at grade level. And I would like to speak on behalf of the reading professional positions that are at risk of being cut from our school, because I really know firsthand just how valuable they are. They're an enormous benefit to our students. We have needed support that we have to move from the local to actually meaningful and closing the gap. I know that there's parents in this school who have had students who weren't reading at benchmark, and our professionals reading teachers have helped them to grow and actually close that gap. Our reading professionals tend to go with tier 2 students, so students who are not too far behind but are not currently meeting the goal. We have students every January who we consider our graduates. They've had reading support and they've gone from reading below grade level to actually meeting the grade level benchmarks. And at that point, we typically bring in more students who are not receiving reading support, but we'll be checking in and see which students are not quite there. And oh, these students need more support. We're going to come in January and in spring. We're very happy to say, wow, these students are now meeting our grade level benchmarks. I recently sat down with our school principal, and I sat down with John and said, hey, how are conferences? I said, oh, they're great. It's such a great time of year because we get to look at some of these students, especially different students who were not able now to close the gap. They're actually meeting the goal, and it's such an amazing celebration. And at that point, is told me that our reading for our professional position was a position that was likely going to be cut from the budget. Things weren't changed. And by the way, I really truly feel that we don't pay our professionals nearly as much as we should. They do an amazing job. It really helps our students. They provide targeted small group instruction. They provide help with our students learning their sight words, learning how to decode and read words, how to build their comprehension. And these groups are really tailored to meet the individual needs of the students that they're working with. These students are grouped across classrooms to ensure that the decisions that are made for instruction can really be made based on the very specific and unique needs of the students. what is holding these students back? Is it their reading comprehension, is it their coding, and then the instruction is really tailored to their individual needs. Kristen Brown is our reading professional. We're very lucky to have her. She brings a lot of expertise as the previous director of kinder care and a preschool program. She's highly trained and qualified. As many of you guys know, how hard it is to find qualified professionals these days. We actually recently lost our reading professional, Mrs. Tippett, and when she left, we had multiple candidates for the position. Were no shows, they just didn't even show for the interview. Had a candidate who showed up 10 minutes late and thought, wow, look, never even wanted to this first, they're 10 minutes late. But in this market, it's very hard to find these qualified professionals. I think who use some of these positions, unfortunately, are going to move on and find other positions, and that's going to be our loss. And specifically for Kristen, she really is a person so motivated. She works so hard to find engaging books for her students. She reaches out to more new programs and intervention strategies. They can really meet those individual needs. It takes a lot of dedication. We're really happy as people are schools and meet them.
Peyton, 39 Town Drive. I just wanted to speak on, I think, finally, the police department pension. They deserved that years ago, they should have never gotten rid of it, we would have been able to hold on to the police officers. Probably, also on special education, my daughter's in special education, and without the parents, it would set much harder for her. The special ed teachers are terrific, not only visible, but all district wide. I understand why you want to cut back, and maybe the town has grown quite a bit on the list on becoming better against the local schools. Why would you want to lower it down? She was saying it'd be 2 positions. That's too lower than it is now. Why would you want to do that? Don't you want to go raise the bar and make it higher? Think more people want to move this now? Come on, guys. Let's go. Stop, please.
Mark Valley, 41 Principal Ave. And my comment is a quick one about the slide that showed the bar graphs with the proposed, the approved, and then what we actually got to work with, right? The contractual obligations, and then what we actually had to work with. So it was interesting that what we actually got to work with was always lower than the approved, right? Or the contractual obligations. And it seems to me the only way that can be possible, correct me if I'm wrong, is from cutting both jobs, right? And so then when you compare that being a surplus after you kind of cut these necessary positions that I'm still calling them necessary because I'm also a teacher in the district. We every day feel the effects of the cuts, right? So it seems like not really a true comparison to say, oh, we have the surplus after we were kind of forced to make these cuts, right? So that's probably my quick comment to kind of prevent.
Jen Chervian, 561 Personal Ave. Watching the March 21st town council meeting showed me that our town council leaders are a bit out of touch with what is going on and what is needed in our town's educational system. One member referring to the contracted pay increases stated, I think we can tell little Johnny where to sit for a lot less money. That is insulting to our educators, our students, and our parents. Little Johnny might be the autistic child that needs school resources to help reach his full potential. The student who goes home from school wanting to hurt himself or does hurt himself. The Down syndrome child who turns 16 and wants to get a part-time job and is learning basic skills necessary to do so. The dyslexic child who is struggling to read and write. The scholar athlete who depends on their time on the baseball field to thrive academically and socially. The fine arts student who has finally found their niche in a school theater production. We have heard a lot about year-end budget surplus in the Board of Ed budget. Operating budgets usually have some sort of contingency funds. Biggest driver for the excess in the last few years has been COVID. And looking at what the surplus was spent on, nothing seems excessive or unreasonable. Technology, classroom equipment and supplies, and some basic items for general upkeep.
we couldn't otherwise have been. In fact, the town of Berlin has had its own budget surplus at the end of the year. Our Board of Finance has shown a chart highlighting the surplus that the Board of Ed has had these recent years. Yet when asked multiple times, they will not share a similar chart with the town of Berlin budget surplus. Families in Berlin deserve the best education. Standardized tests only tell part of the story. Listen to our kids, our teachers, our administrators, and you will hear the success stories that tell us what our true return on investment is. We need to care more. We need an increase that is reflective of the current times in the Board of Education budget. Comparing it to previous years is incorrect. There are too many variables that changed. Grant money is being removed. Children needing more resources. Stop nickeling and diming on the most important assets in our town. We need the 5.84% for our schools to continue to thrive. And for all of our little giants have access to the necessary resources and programs at all levels of education and learning.
Malcolm Envelope, 86 Devonshire Way. As elected officials, you represent our town. I understand the Board of Finance is appointed. However, you all are still a reflection of our town. Each of you represents the interests of our community as elected members. We have to have faith and trust that you will do the right thing. Yet I do wonder what you are here to represent, to fight for, to uphold. Sitting through the last several Board of Finance meetings and listening to the recording for recent town council meetings, I am left with the sinking feeling that no, you are not looking to do what is best, what is in the best interest for our town. And I have been shocked at the comments being made as elected or appointed officials. I am here in support of education, our educational system, and schools in our town of Berlin, where we have all made a home, purchased, or rented, a roof over our heads, because we believe that our children will get the best chance of thriving in a safe, comfortable, and inspiring community that will provide them with the best education possible. Because Berlin is, and I hope will continue to be known to have great, not good, but great, excellent, superb schools and educational programming. A place that others will want to come and live in. Our property values correlated with how well the education system is. And I, for one, would like to see those values stay where they are and ensure mine and our children continue to attend a great school system for their education. This will not be possible if that these contractual obligations of 4.24% increase in the budget is passed. Anything less than this will surely mean cutting critical staff and programming. Staff that work with our most vulnerable. And programming that provide fun and team-based activities, art, music, sports. When those services are not available, even the most stable and high-performing students suffer. Why? Because resources have to be redeployed to those that need it most. And it won't be to that high-performing students. Is that really what you want? You purposely want to see the decline in the schools? 3% is simply not acceptable and not doable. It's clear the Board of Finance did not heed the specifics of the Board of Ed. What about the 1.6% remaining operational items resulting in a full need of the 5.86 increase? I fully support the 5.86%, and I'm willing to contribute my part as a taxpayer. I do not want to see the school covered because some of you feel you just can't increase taxes. Why not? I know we are in an election year. We are not yet in a stable economy, we're decreasing, we're staying put in going forward. The difference between the original request that the superintendent provided versus the current request is because there were positions that have already been taken off the table. A lead teacher and the lead. Several other teachers. In order to bring that back, they had to increase the contractual obligations to 4%. It's important when you're including the data to be able to state the differences so that people can understand. It wasn't just a matter of numbers. There were definitely changes that were happening. I have faith that you'll do the right thing. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Thank you, Janice, for your information. My name is Megan Elma with the ADA Brandon Queen. I have one thing to ask of you. You showed us a lot of numbers tonight. The one number you didn't show us was what the taxpayer would pay an increase if you were to raise the Board of Ed budget up to a asked amount. 460 is what we're already paying in your example. How much more would the taxpayer pay? Let us make a choice.
Sue Harmon, 255 Berlin Street, teacher at the middle school. Thank you, Ms. Donovan, for speaking about the need for literacy resources for our elementary school students. I'd also like to speak about the need for literacy resources for our high school and middle school students. We've already had a literacy specialist in high school, and now it's rolling down to the middle school and the elementary schools. I think everyone in the room can agree that we want literate students. We want good readers, we want good writers, we want thinkers. And as teachers, it's one of our biggest goals for our students is to be all of these things. When we are consistently cutting these important staff members out of the school budget, starting with the high school and now rolling down into the middle and elementary schools, it's detrimental to the learning of our kids. This is just something that's absolutely unacceptable for us to do. I don't see how anyone in this room right now needs for decreasing literacy supports for our students. In the middle school, it's not that reading intervention teacher is not just supporting our lowest performing readers. She's supporting readers across the board. She helps all of us as teachers so that we can provide important literacy instruction. She brings us the latest technology resources, the latest resources on research-based learning. She's supporting teachers and she's supporting our readers. At this point, I'm so nervous about what's going to happen as this keeps trickling down. Please support our students in literacy. This is just, it's unacceptable.
Hi, Crystal Gilbert, 28 Glenbrook Road. I'm here tonight actually because I'm coming to work and I can see water parks in our community, and that's why I was here today. I was asking for guys to help us with the budget so that we could fix our parks and make our community better. I feel like every year goes by, things going down. Sad to see that wasn't mentioned at all in the budget. So that's disheartening, but I'm gonna keep coming to these meetings and hoping that there will be a time when this budget will be allocated to the things that our community cares about, for example, education and the parks in our community and making it a great place to live. Sitting here though, I thought was asking about parks, they are still very important to our children. And again, with our school children and our community is more important thing, and I'm hoping that with the community, I appreciate all of you up there because I do not want to be up there. So I thank you for all of your efforts, and I hope that we will come to some good decisions and help the community, the people who are here, while we're here. Because I know it's some police officers, but they're getting their budget. So hopefully, the school and our community will miss. Thank you.
Anybody online? Meeting, I appreciate everyone's comments, I think everybody deserves. Say their comments and their opinions. Mayor, we're going to decide, we're going to vote on. Session, but thanks for everyone for attending.